Hellcat.
Hi everyone, I'm Angelfire and welcome back, explorers, to my tiny tales. Be sure to also look at the description below for all credits given. And with that said, before we get into today's tale, this will be the last episode, at least for a while. Besides, I have to type up and share everything I've already written, as well as what I'm currently writing, to Tumblr before I share it to YouTube. And yes, that way, me saying I'm a part time storyteller actually makes a lot of sense. Because this is one of those things where, yeah, it's not going to um, be an everyday sort of thing. Not like the homecoming fire. And in fact, I do want to revisit that and actually make it a little bit better. So you can call it a draft, if you will. In fact, uh, maybe a draft or something like that. Gods of Nature, I think, is pretty well done as it is. After all, it was merely an idea. But, with all that said, after today's story, the next episodes, when they show up, I will definitely have books with symbols on them. A symbol for games, a symbol for ideas. Oh, gee, that would be a light bulb, I think. A story, uh, a symbol for maybe fantasy fairy stuff, or yeah, you know, fairy stuff. Uh, I think a tree, a moon, a sun, a crown. Yeah, I will get into the nitty gritty of it later, but I just wanted to let you know what I was planning on doing. Now, with all that said, I think we should probably get into today's story. Okay, so a little bit of background for this. When I wrote it, it was meant as a creative writing uh, assignment, but I think it was more for extra credit. So I don't know. I do know that I do want to do more with it. So this is what you're going to get for now. So you can call it a draft, if you will, or an idea. And the story is Unknown Reality. By me, of course. Amy slowly woke up to Hold on a second. Amy slowly woke up to a gentle swaying motion. Her eyes, still heavy with sleep, struggled to open. She straightened out her leading position and began to stretch. All the while she could hear the repetitive clip-clop of the mount she rode. At first she thought she was riding a white horse, but as the blurriness finally left her eyes, Amy did a double take when her eyes landed on her mount's horn. She realized she was riding a unicorn. As Amy was beginning to become more aware of things, she felt the weight of her clothes and weapons on her back and side. Maybe. She wasn't quite sure what she carried or wore, but she knew without a doubt it was not something modern in nature. All that aside, the trees' leaves were blue. In fact, the leaves, grass, and bushes were all blue. When she was able to see the sky above, she couldn't help but stare. The sky itself was a vibrant green as yellow clouds drifted by. Not wanting to risk her eyesight, she didn't look directly at the dull white sun. All she knew was that this was not her world, or even her reality. The unicorn she rode was proof enough about this not being her reality at all. She began to look closer at her surroundings, only for them to become hazy. She sighed as her unicorn came to a stop, hoping visibility would become clearer. She looked up as she saw a purple stop sign and some traffic lights. She glanced at the forest path to see it was more like a well-trodden road. As the stoplights changed from purple to blue, the unicorn began to move again. As they proceeded, she couldn't help but laugh when she saw a sign declaring, in its own way, "Danger! Dragon Crossing." As they continued on the trodden path, or road, really, she began seeing more things she recognized. From a bed in the middle of nowhere to a giant cup full of writing utensils in it. Finally, the unicorn came to a stop right outside a cave. Amy dismounted the unicorn when she saw a subtle glow from deep within the cave's mouth. Unable to ignore her curiosity, she entered the cave's mouth. Subconsciously, she grabbed the pommel and then the hilt of her sword that swung at her hip. It was only then she realized a bow and a quiver of arrows were hanging on her back. Taking a deep breath, she went deeper into the cave until she reached a tunnel. The glow was getting brighter, so uh, she continued down the tunnel. The deeper into the tunnel she got, the brighter the glow. Soon she came to the end of the tunnel, which opened up into a huge cavern, which was the source of the glow she had seen at the cave's entrance. In front of her, in the middle of the cavern, was a huge pile of gold. All around the cavern were what appeared to be magic lights in crystal balls, that gave the illusion of flickering torches. Meanwhile, the gold in turn reflected the light to the entrance of the cave. The coins began making a shifting sound, catching her attention. As some of the gold began to lift a giant reptilian figure with golden scales arose, that like wings spreading wide. Amy stood very still as she held her breath as she realized she had found a dragon and its hoard of gold. The creature of legend forked um, the creature of legend's forked tongue flicked out to taste the air, and then it began to scan the cavern with its huge reptilian eyes. Who dares wake the powerful, all-knowing, the majestically beautiful Tiamat? The dragoness demanded as her huge eyes finally landed on Amy. She gasped as her heart began to beat faster, even as she could feel herself freeze up. Tiamat seemed to smirk as she puffed smoke through her mouth and nose, making sure it landed on Amy's frozen figure. At that moment, the cavern began to rumble in a repetitive manner. Amy lost her balance as she found herself being shook by the sudden movement. Wake up, Amy, or you'll be late for school, Tiamat roared, as the rumbling of the cavern continued to shake the ground. She lost her balance for a second time and fell to the floor. Everything went dark, and her entire body began to ache. Amy, dear. Oh, wait. Amy, dear, are you going to get into bed after you turn that dreadful alarm clock off? A voice that sounded vaguely like Tiamat's called. Amy slowly came down. Amy slowly came to with a groan. She reached for the alarm clock on her desk and hit the off button. The alarm clock featured a golden dragon atop a pile of gold. Its alarm was a Its alarm was a rumbling sound, and when it went off it shook Amy's desk. Beside the notebook she had been writing in was a pen that had an image of a sword on it. She picked it up and put it with her other pens. One had a bow on it, and the other had a quiver and arrows. Soon all three pens were in a cup with other writing utensils. On the cup's side was a picture of a unicorn, and above it was a message that had faded over time. She stretched as she realized it was still night. Amy turned to look at the calendar on the wall above her bed. The next day was marked as an in-service day, and that month's picture was of a dragon crossing sign. On the other side of her calendar was an old coloring picture that had been colored in by her younger self, who thought it would be cool to have blue trees, a green sky, and yellow clouds, as well as a dull white sun. I guess I dreamed of an unknown reality, Amy whispered to herself, slowly climbing into bed for the night. And that is where today's tale ends. Um, I'm also going to be sure to leave a link to Unknown Reality in the description below. Um, so if you want to read it yourselves, you can. With all that said, I'm going to leave all the little mistakes and hiccups that I did within the within the story or when I was reading the tale because why not? It's still drafted. Um, well, it's still a work in progress, if you will, because I definitely do want to do more with it. So you could say it's definitely a work in progress. This is, for this foreseeable future, the last episode for now. So, as a recap, any editing I do will be in the beginning and the ending of my story, Unknown Reality. However, Unknown Reality itself will not have any editing this time around. Yeah, just whatever. Um, with all that said, I think I've talked your ears off long enough. So I'm going to leave you all with this. If you have been enjoying my content, please feel free to leave a like and or subscribe. You can also leave a comment down below in the comment section. Be sure to hit that notification bell because YouTube doesn't always like to share. Be safe, be healthy, and as always, be true to you. Mena Angelfire, signing off.